All right, I think we'll get started. I know some people are still coming in, but welcome everyone. Thank you for attending our first Blueprints to the Trades speaker series this fall. We have a really awesome panel discussion today. But before we get into introductions and welcoming our guest speakers, just a quick housekeeping item. We are going to have some time at the end of the panel discussions for taking questions from the audience. So if you do have any questions, please feel free to use the chat feature in Zoom. Put your questions there, and then at about 4:15, we will get to the questions and get those answered for you. So let's kick this off. First of all, again, welcome. My name is Lindsay Tallman. I am the Program Director of Construction Careers Foundation. And Construction Careers Foundation is a nonprofit organization that is dedicated to educating the emerging workforce about all of the great careers in the construction industry. And we do that in a variety of ways, like offering internships, other hands-on experiences, and this Blueprints to the Trades speaker series. And we couldn't do it without our partner, Apprenticeship Minnesota. So I will turn it over to Jeremy Parker to introduce himself.
Hey, everybody. My name is Jeremy Parker. I am a senior field representative with Apprenticeship Minnesota at the Minnesota Department of Labor and Industry. I specialize in registered apprenticeship programs in the building and construction trades and in the utility industry throughout the state of Minnesota. Our entity is the unit that is responsible for regulating and approving apprenticeship programs throughout the state of Minnesota.
Awesome. Thanks, Jeremy. All right, so I'm going to turn it over to our guest speakers for this afternoon. We have CJ Mace, who is a CTE welding teacher at the Minneapolis Public Schools CTE Center at Roosevelt High School. We have Pete Teagland he is a training director at Twin City Ironworkers Apprenticeship and Training Center. And then Jeremy Thompson, who is a training coordinator at Local 6 Plumbers and Pipe Fitters JATC. So I'm going to turn it over to each of our guest speakers. And if you could each take a few minutes to introduce yourselves, share your name, where you work. I think I just did that, but a brief overview of your role and your apprenticeship programs you offer or the classes you offer where you teach. That would be really great. So Pete, if you wanted to go first, that would be great.
Sure. Thanks, Lindsay. My name is Pete Teagland. I'm the training director for Ironworkers Local 512. I have an office here in St. Paul. Ironworkers Local 512 is part of an international organization. So there's ironworker local unions scattered all throughout the United States and Canada. Local 512 specifically has 3 regions. Region A covers like the southern 2/3 of the state of Minnesota and western Wisconsin. Region B covers northern Minnesota and a few northwestern counties in Wisconsin, and also the whole state of North Dakota. So all 3 regions have union halls and training centers. The training gets delivered, different ways. Here in St. Paul, we do night school, so our apprentices work during the day, and then they come to school here 2 nights a week. Basically, the regular high school year from the middle of August until a little before Christmas, and we take a couple weeks off, and we start up right after the first of the year and get done around the end of April. Region B, we deliver it a little different way. We do what's called block training up there. So our students would come in for 4 full 40-hour weeks a year, 2 per semester. And the rest of the year, they're working, provided there's work, and there's always a, possibility of slow times and layoffs and things like that. We have a 4-year apprenticeship program. In 2020, we switched from a 3-year to a 4-year program, you know, basically we were just cramming so much stuff into 3 years that we decided to make it 4. And, you know, to be honest, I was kind of against it because it kind of was a recruiting tool. You know, some of the other trades are 4 and even 5 years long. And I thought, well, man, if ours is 3, we'll get some, you know, some people that maybe we wouldn't. And, you know, I was wrong. I don't think it's affected recruiting at all. So now it's a 4-year program. We have about 1,800 members in our local union. Of those 1,800, probably 750 of them are certified welders. But we have very few people that weld all day, every day. You know, the majority of those people weld parts of each week or parts of each day. You know, we get a lot of people walk through the doors that say they want to be a welder, which is great. You know, they would be afforded that opportunity. But, you know, as far as, you know, welding all day, every day, there just are not many people in our local that do that. And, you know, for sure, it's not the 20-year-olds. But if you get good at it, you know, you might be one of those people. So.
All right. Thank you, Pete. I will toss it over to CJ.
Hi, I'm CJ Mace. I am currently the welding instructor for Minneapolis Public Schools CTE Centers. We are an all-city program. This program was created 3 years ago. So any 10th, 11th, and 12th grader in Minneapolis can get a shuttle to come and take classes at our center. We're about to do construction, so we're going to have a brand new weld shop. We have a really nice shop now, and it's going to expand. I've been teaching high school CTE, so construction, manufacturing, design for the last, and welding and metalworking for the last 10 years. Before that, I was a millwright apprentice in the Carpenters Union. And then before that, I taught college and came out of the arts. And I've used welding in all 3 of those career areas. Our current program is a block program with shuttles. So we provide all the transportation, and the intention is that students get to have a 2-hour block in the shop for a full semester. So they get welding 1 and welding 2, so that it links to external training like tech schools and apprenticeships, and they get a really like core time to actually like play with processes and create projects. It's really fun.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. And then Jeremy.
Yeah, thanks, Lindsay, and good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jeremy Thompson. I am the training coordinator for Plumbers and Pipe Fitters Local 6. But we train plumbers, pipe fitters, pipe welders, and HVAC service technicians for southeastern Minnesota. We cover about 13 counties of the state. We have a 5-year apprenticeship program. So our apprentices, they kind of similar to Pete's, they work for a contractor during the day. So they might work 7 to 3:30 during the day. They come to class with us 2 evenings per week during the regular school year. So it ends up being about 216 hours of classroom instruction and about 2,000 hours of on-the-job training per year. But yeah, we've currently got, we're about 550 working members. So we're not really considered a large local or smaller local. But we've got about 125 apprentices going through the apprenticeship program currently. I was mainly a pipe fitter, pipe welder when I was out in the field. But I always liked welding. It was always a big part of the career, the work that I enjoyed doing. But yeah.
All right. Great. Thank you. Thank you all. All right. So we're going to jump into questions for the panelists now. Just a reminder for everybody in the audience, as you're kind of hearing what our panelists are talking about, if there's a question that arises, please do put your question in the chat feature, and then we will get to your questions a little later on. All right. So my first question is kind of directed at all 3 of you. You talked a little bit about, you know, how you got started with the trades. What role has welding played in your career specifically?
Well, I can start, you know, specifically welding, you know, for the iron workers. when I became a certified welder in the apprenticeship program, it made me more valuable to the contractor. If it came layoff time and you know, two people are equal and one of them's a certified welder and one of them's not, it's a really easy decision for the contractor on who they're going to keep. You know, as far as personally in my career, I started teaching, and we have in our program we do all the weld training. We can do all the testing and all the inspecting and certify people. So I took it upon myself to obtain my certified welding inspector through the AWS, and that just opened up some more opportunity for me teaching. And then I was able to get the coordinator's job because I had that certificate or certification. And then when this job opened up, same thing. So you know, welding really has opened up doors for me, and I'm an average welder at best, but you know, just by staying at it and you know, trying to get a little bit more, it's opened up some more doors for, you know, for our members. Same thing, the more welding certifications they have, the more valuable they become. And although it doesn't mean a higher hourly wage, it means probably a higher annual wage, because you're going to be working more than somebody without certifications.
Yeah, I would say for me, when I first got into the trade, I really had no idea that I was going to end up wanting to be a welder. I didn't even know what a pipe fitter was when I applied for the apprenticeship program. I thought I was going to get into plumbing and I was going to be a plumber. But I got on the job site, started working with a lot of the people, and a lot of them just said, you're going to be a pipe fitter. And I just gravitated towards that type of work. But I really liked, I liked working with steel. I liked the welding, torch cutting, all that stuff just really intrigued me. I did it in high school and I really enjoyed it then. I had no idea I would make a career out of it, but I got into it. I like the challenge of it, learning all the different weld processes, whether it's TIG, MIG, stick, we do all of it, but working towards all those weld certifications, being able to do those processes in all different positions and x-ray welds and all this stuff, was just something that I really enjoyed. Um, but once I learned how to do it, I got a lot of weld certifications. There's so many doors that were opened up, as far as even getting to like leadership roles. I could work for almost any contractor I wanted to. Tons of opportunities for overtime. Just a lot of doors opened up once you gain those certifications. But yeah, it's definitely been a great opportunity.
As a millwright, welding was just one part of my toolbox, but it was also a big part of the toolbox. I came out of the arts and taught college, and I worked on machinery as part of my area. I was a printmaker. So when I moved back to the Twin Cities, I got recruited by the millwrights directly because I had experience with CNC plasma, welding, and machinery. I've done I grew up in in a farming area, so I've worked construction jobs my whole life. I actually paid for undergraduate working for the electric company when I was younger. But welding's been a huge part of like my whole trajectory in the millwrights. It's one component, but depending on what industry you decide to sort of specialize in, it might be a larger component or a smaller component. I worked in the energy industry a lot, so I did do some TIG and some welding on turbine work, but I worked on a lot of other projects, conveyors, altering buildings to move in machinery and place it, weldments that held machinery. So like welding is always integrated into millwrighting, but then you have all these other things that you do alongside it. Knowing metal is a huge part of millwrighting. So like these side skills that go with welding are really important. I got hired 100% of the time as a younger apprentice or a new apprentice because I could read plans and layouts, and I could do a lot of the work that is like part of welding too. I went in the trades in my 30s, so I wasn't a young apprentice. So I also got placed a lot because I could like organize a job site and do custom fabrication stuff too. So, and that came out of my welding. So, and that's a big role in my teaching too, because my students aren't all necessarily trying to be welders or choosing this as a career, like they get an arts grad requirement. So really in the shop, we're trying to like wrap all those skills that are part of welding, but like welders have those skills. So they're always like highly desirable commodities in a lot of industry and a lot of construction. And they can bring that to like a craft custom business, or they can do like an apprenticeship in a union building trade, and really they have that flexibility. So
Awesome, thank you. Well, so we've heard a lot about like apprenticeship already in this event. So before we go any further, I was thinking maybe we could talk a little bit about the differences between, you know, if a young person wants to go through an apprenticeship or trade school, kind of what are those differences? Or, you know, I'll toss it over to Jeremy Parker right now. You know, if you could talk a little bit about apprenticeship, that would be really helpful, I think.
Sure. Thanks, Lindsay. So, registered apprenticeship programs are kind of the gold standard of the on-the-job learning model. If you want to take it all the way back to the very beginning, you can trace the roots of apprenticeship way back into the Middle Age Europe, building of castles and cathedrals throughout the land, and it transitioned over. All of us really truly learn our jobs through an on-the-job process. It's just registered apprenticeship is a very formalized way of doing that. There's a set of both state and federal regulations that oversee apprenticeship. Uh, so with that, there's kind of like five main components that are in place for any and all registered apprenticeship programs. One is the on-the-job learning portion of it. You know, as Pete and Jeremy have mentioned, you know, their programs are 4 to 5 years. Across the board, most apprenticeship programs are anywhere from 2,000 hours on the minimum end up to 10,000 hours on the high end. Overwhelming majority between 6,000 hours and 8,000 hours, so 3 to 4 years. So there's that on-the-job learning component. There's a supervision component. So all apprentices that are in a registered apprenticeship program have to be supervised at all times on the job by a competent journey worker. So someone that has already done that to supervise them to ensure that they're doing their job properly and safe. Both Pete and Jeremy alluded to schooling. So there is a requirement that all apprentices receive a minimum of 144 hours of related instruction per each year of their apprenticeship. So that instruction needs to be directly related to the occupation that they are learning. In Minnesota, we also require a minimum of 50 hours of safety training over the course of that apprenticeship, just because we want to ensure everyone out there is working in a safe manner where everyone gets to go home at the end of the day alive and with all their digits and limbs attached as well. In a registered apprenticeship program, there are set wage scales as well. So there are guaranteed minimum wages that are paid to apprentices when they start. And those wages will increase over the term of that apprenticeship based on a series of factors, such as completion of a certain amount of on-the-job learning hours, completion of a certain amount of time in the apprenticeship, the completion of a certain amount of schooling or attainment of credentials, or a combination of the both. So all individuals in a registered apprenticeship program know how much money they'll be making at the beginning and what they need to do throughout the course of that apprenticeship to get all of those pay raises. And at the completion of a registered apprenticeship program, Apprenticeship Minnesota Department of Labor and Industry will issue all of those individuals that complete their apprenticeship and move to that title of a journey worker, will issue out a completion certificate, and being that we are granted all of our authority to operate apprenticeship programs in Minnesota by the U.S. Department of Labor, those credentials are recognized across the country. So they're portable. Those are kind of the big components of a registered apprenticeship program. A couple other things that came up in the chat here I see as well as under state law, for at least those that are going to go to work in building and construction trade industries or occupations, and or any type of occupation that's deemed a hazardous occupation, which would include welding. Those individuals need to be at least 18 years of age to work on a work site or to be employed. There are some carve-outs. If someone is 17 and has graduated from high school with diploma in hand or a GED, they would be allowed to work on those sites. So that's kind of registered apprenticeship in a little bit of a nutshell. We operate, just to plug for everything, you know, especially we're talking about welding. And welding is a skill that's often incorporated into multiple occupations. So when we're looking from our point of view, you know, we see welding integrated into building and construction trades like Jeremy and Pete are promoting, but also in some of our manufacturing sectors as well. So there could be some opportunities for folks there as well.
Great. Thank you for that overview. That was really helpful.
Thanks, Lindsay.
Yeah. Um, so there's the apprenticeship pathway that individuals can take, but some individuals might choose to go to a 2-year college or trade school. So CJ, can you talk a little bit about what that might look like for a high school student?
Sure. And I also want to say, I don't want to completely give the impression that those two are necessarily separate, because I think some of the folks are going to talk about some of the trades do require trade school as part of their apprenticeship or to enter their apprenticeship. And then like my apprenticeship in the millwrights, when you journeyed out, it was accredited, so it was credit bearing. So it could be a path to do training at trade school, even as like a trained journeyman. So they're not totally separated either. And then as a CWI, as a higher level welder, you get credit for having a degree towards that. So students can choose to sort of increase their likelihood of apprenticeship advancement with like kind of a combination. So, but for a high school student kind of looking at their options, all the programs in welding are very different. Like my high school program is set up to try to link students and get them free credits. We're not concurrently enrolled. We do something called articulated credit. So if a student succeeds at some requirements with partner programs, then they get free scholarships to trade schools. So they kind of have this link to enter their program and kind of leap ahead, or at least have it partially paid for. And then also the curriculum that we're doing, because we do OSHA 10 right now and we do a lot of processes that also might bump them ahead in their trade school training. But each of the programs in the region are really different. Some of them are certificate programs where you can do anything from like a TIG manufacturing certificate up to a 2-year degree. And then some are day enrolled, like ANOCA, are day enrolled full programs. So students looking at welding as part of trade school, you really want to think about, okay, like what's right for me? Where do I live? Do I want to work during the day? Do I need a lot of flexibility, or do I want that sort of like cohort of people I'm traveling with? And then what do I want to do with my welding? Because it might matter what program you choose, because different unions are linked to different tech school programs. So as a high school student, if you're looking at trade school, like really go visit and kind of have some idea of what you're interested in. You don't have to necessarily always commit immediately, but it does sort of help you narrow down what direction you should go and what school you should apply for, because they are really, really different. And high school students tend to assume, oh, all the welding programs work the same. The schools are very different. And there's even opportunities for stuff like PSEO while you're in high school, and PSEO is free. And so again, all those schools do different rules, different opportunities. So there's really a lot out there, and you have to kind of dive in and explore and visit those schools to find out. And then also link with these folks who are doing apprenticeships, because they're going to tell you, oh, this will increase your likelihood, or you have to attend a program at this college, or you have to have this tech school training to enter our apprenticeship. So really like, that's kind of an important component of that conversation about if I should go to trade school or not, because all those programs really set you up differently.
So I guess to piggyback on CJ's comment about, for Pete and Jeremy, do you require any sort of trade school before someone comes and applies for your program?
We don't require any trade school necessarily. It is encouraged, any education is great. We have a lot of applicants that went through maybe a welding technologies program at the community college. The one area for us that some additional trade school is extremely helpful would be for the HVAC service side of things. But it's not necessarily required. Probably one of the biggest benefits for an applicant getting into the program would be some related experience, and just trying to get on with a contractor and just learning some of the hands-on side of things is really beneficial. But no, it's not required to have any type of post high school education to get into the program.
And ours is the same, Lindsay. We don't have any requirements as far as, anything at a tech school before you get in. Like Jeremy said, we like to see young people come in who have had a job before, whether that's at the Dairy Queen or the Ace Hardware. Preferably it'd be something outside, physical, something with tools. None of that is necessary, but if we get a 18-year-old kid who's never had a job, never had a boss, that's probably somebody we wouldn't take a chance on. Whereas if we had, a young person who worked at the Dairy Queen for 4 years through high school, well, that's impressive, and if we had somebody that, did some form of construction in the summer during high school, that's even more impressive. So, some kind of work history is the number one thing. And a lot of our students have never turned a welding machine on before they get in here. And as Jeremy will tell you, sometimes that's better when it comes to welders, or teaching them anyways.
All right. Well, so earlier on in this conversation, you all were talking about certifications and getting more certifications makes you a better welder and more more appealing to an employer, right? So that was kind of my next question is, can you elaborate more on like what kind of certifications individuals can earn? But then I'm also seeing in the chat here, there's a really great question that, either one of you can answer. What beneficial or required specific experience, training, or certifications like NCCER, OSHA 10, etc., should someone with a high school diploma or GED should bring with them when applying for an apprenticeship? And also kind of piggybacking on that, what can someone do now to get experience, or maybe, be more appealing to an apprenticeship program, when they're applying for an apprenticeship program or with an employer, what can they do now to get some experience?
Yeah, those are some good questions. Just to kind of answer that one, none of those certifications are necessarily required to apply for the program. There is competition for these positions though, so I would encourage somebody, if they have an OSHA 10, definitely include that with their application, send that in. If they have reference letters from previous employers, we've had reference letters from instructors at their school, their high school. Anything that you can submit with your application is a great thing. It might show some work ethic. It might show that they're on time for class every day. It might show that they're invested in the class and that they learned a lot from it. If they have an OSHA 10, it shows that they've invested some time in their education, their training. Those are all good things, but none of them are necessarily required. All of our apprentices do go through those certifications and they get those with us here throughout their apprenticeship. I did see another question on there too, not trying to get off topic, but they're asking about a sponsor for us. And I don't know if the iron workers are the same way, but we don't require any applicants to find a sponsor. There are some trades that they would reach out to a contractor and that's considered their sponsor, and that's how they would get into the apprenticeship. We do all the hiring for our contractors. So they would come through us first, go through the application process. If they're accepted, they would then be dispatched out to a work for a contractor. So that's kind of how I guess we
Millwrights
handle it.
don't require a sponsor either. You interview in
Okay.
to your apprenticeship.
And from my perspective, as from the regulatory side of it, when we hear the word sponsor, that would be the actual apprenticeship program. So like Jeremy's program, Local 6, plumbers and pipe fitters, or Pete's program, Twin City Iron Workers. That's a sponsor. I am not aware of any programs, and I handle about 45 of them across the state, that require an interested apprentice to go out and find an individual to sponsor them. That's just kind of an old thing of the old days, and that's no longer the case.
Okay. I thought the carpenters still
Yeah.
did that. It could be.
Some you have to have a letter, like an employment letter, like
Yes, they have to be hired by a contractor, but it
I
doesn't.
think
They
that's what
don't
they're
need to.
trying to
Okay.
say is
Yeah.
that, like, yeah.
Yep.
Sure.
Some of the unions you have to be pre-employed, and then some unions you interview directly with the union.
Okay, sure.
I think that's what they're trying to ask.
Yeah,
And
ours is,
oh, go ahead.
I was
Oh.
gonna say ours is the same as the pipe fitters and plumbers. You join the union, get accepted into the apprenticeship program, join the union finds you a job.
Kind of go back to the other question. My experience with high school students too is like, if you want to do welding, because it does take training at these training centers, some other things that have really helped students get linked into their apprenticeships has been some stuff that's like bridge certs. So like, I teach in an urban district. Lots of students don't have their driver's licenses because they can't get into classes. So getting your driver's license, then getting a fork truck certification and being able to drive a fork truck like somewhere like Menards or in a warehouse. Being a like job site helper on a different trade, but like working with them. So you're doing measurement and plans, like having a job where you do inventory or like keep track of some of the budget in a store. All of those things have helped my students get like interviewed and like help them in their apprenticeship, because not only did they get in, but then when they got in, they had an easier time in their first couple of years because they had these like starter skills that helped them continue to do their welding training.
I would agree with CJ. I mean, you gotta have a driver's license. If you don't, well, that's one of our minimum requirements is you gotta have a driver's license. The chances of success in any of these trades is virtually zero if you don't have a driver's license. As far as us, like I said before, young people, they need to have some kind of work history. Maybe that's working on the farm, maybe that's working at the SA. And whatever you're doing when you walk in the door, we like to hear that, hey, I was awesome at the Dairy Queen and I'm ready for the next step. I had a young kid apply who he was working at the state fairgrounds, and I said, well, you about to get busy? He said, no, I got laid off. And he got laid off August 1st. He said the state fair was starting to slow down. And I said, well, it doesn't even start for a month. So if you're working for the state fair and get laid off August 1st, the chances of making it in the building trades are not very good. So, really that job history is a huge one. It doesn't necessarily have to be in what you're interested in.
Show up on time and get your manager's reference at your job too. Don't show up late. And I've had students who work, but then lose that reference. So like really make an effort to like show up there so they can say to your next step, wow, they showed up, they're here, they're doing what they need to do.
CJ, so how might someone know if welding is the right fit for them?
Try it. Take the risk and try it. That's the point of my program. I have kind of 4 tracks. There's students that are just trying it and randomly, and they've never touched a tool before, and it's for fun, and they're scared, and they've never done anything like this, and it's totally new. I have students that have a trades intention. I have students going into engineering, and they're doing the hands-on because they're going to have to build something, and sometimes academic engineering programs in high schools don't tell them that you have to be able to make the thing. And then I have students that are looking at tech school or looking at specifically being welders. Try it. It's so fun. And we do a lot of things that you're never going to get to do anywhere else. So even if like you don't think it's your career intention, like I did my apprenticeship in my 30s, like you never know what's going to happen, and it's pretty freaking fun.
Pete, so what's the biggest misconception that people have about welding?
Well, we see it all the time. People come in, journeymen come in here, they maybe never had a weld cert, and they come in here and say, hey, I'm here today to get a weld cert. And they think like it's going to happen, and they're going to practice for 10 minutes and then take the test. I mean, my opinion, welding is patience and practice. And if we have a apprentice or even a journeyman fail a welding test, they think it's the end of the world. And I don't know one good welder that hasn't failed a welding test before. And in fact, it probably makes you better, you know, if you come in and get lucky and pass it on the first try. You know, that's not always a great thing. If you struggle a little bit and got to figure out the do's and the don'ts and the whys, it just makes you better. So I think I think the biggest misconception, you know, is people thinking they're going to come in here and just all of a sudden be a welder. Because well, I suppose there's some people that can, but I don't know any.
All right. We have a few more questions. So Jeremy, what advice do you have for young people exploring trades like welding?
Yeah, I would say that if that's something that you have an interest in, just like CJ mentioned, just try it, you know. Try it out, see if you like it. It might be something you really love, something you become passionate about. There are thousands of open positions across the country for welders, skilled welders. And it's one of those things that takes a lot of years to become really good at. But my advice would just be to try it out. It might be something you really love doing, something you really enjoy. Um, and if it is something that you really end up getting into and exploring, it's a great career opportunity. The skill set you can get for a skilled welder, it could take you anywhere in the country. You can make all kinds of good money doing it.
So, my next question again aligns with what I've been seeing in the chat too. So I'm going to turn to the chat, and we can ask a couple of questions about. It's really about what how can students gain hands-on experience right now? So CJ, you have an excellent program, welding program in Minneapolis, but for students that don't have access to classes like that, do any of you know where people can go and try welding? I know some people in the chat were wondering, list some welding programs near or in Minneapolis. For high school students in a school without a CTE program, what are their options for exploring the different trade tracks like carpentry, welding, etc., without committing to an apprenticeship or long-term program? So
So
open.
we work with lots of what I call bridge programs. So Construction Careers Foundation is an example, but less hands-on. They're kind of to link you to those. So there's places like arts organizations like the Chicago Avenue Fire Arts Center. There's an organization called IAMA, Industrial Arts Mentorship for All, that are like arts places you can do hands-on. Dunwoody, St. Paul Tech, a whole bunch of the tech schools do summer camps. Um, there, some of the schools like Hennepin Tech, you could take a class for about $400 and you don't have to be admitted into the program. So you can try a little bit like bigger bite, but not necessarily be in like a full program. I've had students mow lawns and buy a welder together and like each contribute $100 and put it in their garage and use it. So that's one thing I've seen students do. So there's lots of places that you can take like taster classes. There's some hack spaces, they're called, that are like independent studios where people have banded together and bought equipment in Minneapolis, like Minneapolis Maker. There's places like the people doing the fire stuff for some of the like the May Day parade. There's people who have events in their garages. So that like just like there's lots of places you can get a taste and see if you like it from the start.
Yeah, we've done some work with a Boy Scout troop that they had a welding badge. So one of our members was a Boy Scout leader and brought some kids in here. I've heard of community ed. You know, they might open up their or have a shop, you know, to give some classes and things like that. So there's a way.
Yeah, similar for us. We've had some, building strong communities. I know that they've had some students go through those programs. We've had the Girl Scout troop in here and try to get them in the weld shop, getting the hood on and trying it all out. There are some community education programs in Rochester too that do that, but I think there's opportunity out there if you really dig into it. But
Mhm. Yeah, there's kind of a follow-up question to that too. You know, besides Dunwoody and St. Paul College, what other places have a summer camp that you would recommend? So if you have any ideas, feel free to share them. Otherwise, this could be something too where we could collect a lot of this information from the three of you, or even Jeremy Parker, if you're aware of anything, and we could send a follow-up email to everybody in this audience with some recommendations on where to get some welding experience. But if you have anything further to add, please do.
The Northland has a bunch of community and tech colleges that are like merged together. So like Bemidji State is actually both a tech and community college. When I was younger, I took classes in Grand Rapids at the community college. So search in your region. Like we can't necessarily, because like my job works regionally, but there are accessible classes, especially in the Northland, because there's a push to increase the economy for young students to actually take classes at schools, and like they're all over the place. So you kind of got to search in your area, and but there's a lot out there, especially up north too. You might have to travel to it because the schools are further apart sometimes, but all of those like small public community colleges have training classes like that.
I love that we have someone in the audience from Bemidji, so it's great that we have that reach. Awesome. Thanks for being here. All right. Before we get back to the chat for more questions, I think I have one more. So, Jeremy, if you could, and anybody else, if you have anything to add, we might have touched on this a little bit, but if you have more information to share, that'd be great. So, are there opportunities for advancement in welding? And what is a typical career path in the welding industry? We have a lot of young people that are interested in welding. I know there's a lot of different entry points, but if you have any more that you can share about that, that would be excellent.
Yeah, there's at least for us, for the plumbers and pipe fitters, there are opportunities. Your career can start out, they all obviously start out like as an apprentice. As you advance through the program, a lot of them gain welding certifications. They might become, more specialized in certain areas or weld processes. But it does open up a lot of doors. So they may become a journey worker, then they become a foreman, a job superintendent. We have a lot of members that, may move in with a shop or a contractor and become a project manager. They might deal with manpower. We have members that, once they're out in the field, they end up starting their own business. So there's tons of opportunities with that. And if they enjoy just the welding side of things, a lot of them go right into get their CWI. They can become a weld inspector, and some of them choose to travel, so they can travel all over the country and just do that for larger projects. So it can open up doors, a lot of doors for them.
Yeah, I would agree. I think construction, as an industry has, the most opportunity for advancement, or as much as any occupation out there. If you want to carry heavy stuff for 30 years, you can do that. If you want to own your own company, you can do that. It's just whatever path you want to take. And if you want to keep advancing, you're going to have to put in more time and do extra stuff. And if like I said before, we don't have a lot of people that weld all day, every day, but if that's your goal, that can happen, but it's not going to be easy.
So once you've been accepted into an apprenticeship program, in the beginning of this conversation, you were talking about all of the different certifications. Is that something that the apprenticeship program offers, or does an individual need to go and seek that on their own?
It's a one-stop shop.
Okay. Very nice. Okay. Excellent. Well, I'm going to turn it over to the chat box here and go through. I think there was a few questions that we didn't get to. What is the typical timeline or schedule for when apprenticeships start? Do they start throughout the year or at a particular time of year?
For us, we hire one time per year. Our application deadline's around the 1st of April. So if they have a completed application in by then, We would send them notices. We do some testing, so some general aptitude, basic math testing. Everybody that passes that will get an interview. And so our interviews end up in early to mid-May. And then from there, we have our ranking list. And then we just draw from that ranking list and place them with contractors as needed. So they would start work early June, and then our school year starts up in September.
We're similar. Our timeline's a little bit sooner in the year, but we also take apprentices one time a year. I guess there's always exceptions, but for the most part, typically you need to have applied by March 1st. Interviews are the end of March. If you get selected out of interviews, you'd come in for about 7 days of safety training and some job readiness stuff, and then be eligible to go to work somewhere around May 1st. It takes a while to get everybody out to work just because, you can go to work May 1st. Construction, I don't know, we don't really get busy around here till the 4th of July. And so sometimes it takes, a month or 6 weeks to get everybody out to work. So.
Working with students who have applied to a lot of different apprenticeships, I always tell them, think February and get the idea of rolling deadlines out of your head. The current population of students have largely experienced this idea of rolling deadlines at schools. What that means is they waitlist if they're popular, and you can't keep up. Like you don't have one time that you're applying, so it's like sort of ambiguous. In the trades, people are going to give you a hard deadline, and you have to meet it, or you don't get the spot. And usually it's about February, because if you're working in construction, there's seasons, so they're filling their roster for this next season. So I always tell my students, even if, let's say, one of the trades it's March, you should have your materials together and stuff by February, so you can really just like apply and be secure and know what you're doing.
Yeah, and maybe I'll toss it over to Jeremy Parker. But I know Apprenticeship Minnesota has a really great website that talks about timelines. If you want to just speak to that a little bit too, as a place where people can go as a resource.
Yeah, so on our website, to kind of answer and address some of these questions that kind of have historically always come up, we've created a kind of a landing page on our website where we have all the various occupations that have apprenticeship programs aligned with them, where an interested person can go in and, let's say, click on iron worker, and it will bring them to a landing page which has all the information that an individual would need if they're interested in pursuing an apprenticeship with the Iron Workers Local 512 or with Plumbers and Pipe Fitters Local 6 down out of Rochester. So we'll have on there like the application period is from here, or here's what you need to do to apply, what the minimum qualifications are. Do you need to be 18 years of age or older? Do you need any type of supplemental certification to enter that? Do you need a driver's license? Do you need to provide, your own tools? Whatever it is, we've went through and worked with all of the programs to get that information up there to be as exact and as up to date as possible, so that an interested person can go on there and find that information. I know also on your site too, Lindsay, on the Construction Careers Foundation, constructioncareers.org site has a lot of that information as well. Ours just delves more into apprenticeship programs that are outside of the building and construction trades. Like I mentioned, some of the manufacturers that are throughout the state, or, and as we're talking about welding in the utility industry and the power generation side of things, there's an awful lot of welding in those careers as well. So we have the contact information and the application process for a lot of the utility providers throughout the state that utilize registered apprenticeship as well. So that's the best resource that we can direct folks to. In my history of working in and around construction for the last 30 years, like I've always told folks that are interested, start getting ready to go around St. Patrick's Day is always kind of the date that I throw out there for folks if they're really interested in doing this. Is that's the date you need to have all your ducks in a row to start going out and trying to either fill out applications or start reaching out to contractors that are affiliated with apprenticeship programs as well. And to the other thing I'll plug for everybody on here, if you do have questions about any of these apprenticeship programs, feel free to reach out to the program sponsor contact. Folks like Pete, folks like Jeremy, they're really great at either getting you connected with themselves directly or with one of their staffs to explain and walk through a lot of this information with interested individuals or even with yourselves. They're great resources, and I have yet to find any of them that haven't been willing to take some time to get people pointed in the right direction.
Excellent. And then, yeah, and as we're closing, in a few minutes, we'll have a slide at the end that has QR codes that will take you to each of our speakers' respective websites to learn more too. So the last question, oh, there's two more questions in the chat. Where would you recommend getting a forklift or fork truck certification?
I got mine through my apprenticeship, and there's many of them, but there's also private like employers and companies that do it as part of your employment. So I've had students at Menards be in my classes, then be employed at Menards, and then do their fork truck, and then do their CDL. And now a couple of my students drive CDL. So like they got a series of certs, and those are all useful certs too in construction industry. So they got it through like an employer that they got hired with. So some of my students don't do their apprenticeship or training immediately after high school. They might go link with an employer that likes to sort of sponsor training as part of their employment. And then that helps them link, pay for tech school or pay for their tools or pay for their car so they can do their apprenticeship. So there's lots of employers out there, warehouses, furniture dealerships. They sometimes do those. And then there's some places like Dakota and some schools that do fork truck. There's a community center on 38th, Sabathani, that was doing fork truck certs. I don't know if they're still doing those classes, but there's like smaller organizations that do maintenance trainings that will do fork truck certs. Summit Academy might do fork truck certs, so that you can get them via some other places as well.
Excellent. All right. And the last question in the chat is, do you have to go back to school to get welding experience, or do you have to find something like an internship, apprenticeship, and get paid for doing it while getting some experience on welding?
So most of the time for us, an apprentice gets in, we start our welding classes in their second year. They might get a taste of it on the job site, and then they start welding, working towards a certification. Once they get that certification, they start working towards a different certification and a different certification. And then I always say that welding doesn't get any easier than in the weld shop, in the training centers. And so the real experience comes on the job site when, here in the training center, there's really no pressure. You get out on the job site and you don't want to be working on a weld for 2 days and then it fails, right? And then you got to cut it out and probably somebody else has to redo it. So experience is the greatest teacher, and to get it, you just got to do it. So a little bit of exposure on the front end, some training, and then real world experience with the boss breathing down your neck.
I have students doing internships that have been allowed to weld or are kind of getting on the job experience. I have a student that did the Phoenix program at MnDOT, and then now he works on a crew. They kept him after his internship, and they employed him part-time because they want to see if he'll work for them and maybe do an apprenticeship via MnDOT. So he gets to try all these different things. So he's in like the heavy equipment shop. So because he welds with me, they've let him do some stuff on the job. So he gets experience, and he's also building his own go-kart and like doing field welds on his own car at home. So he's getting like, he's really good in the booth here, but that field weld at home that he's doing on his own frame is a totally different experience and a really good experience to show him what it's like to be out of the booth. So like stuff like that are really good, like ways to, but like my certs came completely in my apprenticeship. Like my apprenticeship also had, in the millwrights had wraparound, the pile drivers too. We had wraparound welding as part of the apprenticeship. So there were people that came in with lots of experience, and there were people that came in as total beginners, and we all had to do like weld class as the apprenticeship. So
Yeah, most of our apprentices get their experience, either mainly at the training center. We do have a lot of people that get into the apprenticeship that have experience, maybe a factory setting if they're doing a lot of wire feed welding and stuff, and then wanted to get into the trade. But our apprentices get it's typically 40 to 60 hours of classroom or in the weld shop, throughout their apprenticeship. And the idea with that is to get them enough experience to where they can go out on a job site and they can make welds, confidently. Obviously, all of our welds for piping, it's going to get tested. So it's got a pressure testing and such. So yeah, they get a lot of their experience right in the weld shop throughout their apprenticeship.
can I just ask so that
Mhm.
students know, because we say welding, but each trade sort of has their focuses, right? What processes do your trades focus in?
Our guys and gals start out with SMAW or stick welding. And then, our contractors like to see them with flux core wire certifications. Flux core wire is a more productive way to lay down weld. And so we start them out with stick, and then they move into flux core wire. And we do very little MIG welding, very little TIG welding. We got a handful of people in our local with some of those certs, but ours is mainly stick or SMAW and flux core arc welding.
Yeah, ours is mainly most of it's SMAW. That's probably the biggest weld process that we use. It would be, like a 60-10 root, 70-18 out. All of our testing is done in a 6G or at a 45-degree position. So we do a fair amount of TIG welding also. Depending on the process, it's carbon steel, stainless steel. The MIG welding is typically used more in a factory or fab shop type setting. So it isn't as common, but it is used. So if you're in that environment, then you're going to be using that a lot. So, and it'd be similar to Pete's. We do a flux core and a hard wire.
Yeah, and in my apprenticeship, I did lots of SMA, FCA, and I did TIG. So, because I was working in the electrical industry on turbines. So, those are the things. But some of the shops where people were doing the prefab for construction, they were using MIG, but they
Mhm.
really only worked in shop. They weren't working in the field.
All right. So that's all the questions we have for from the audience members. Pete, CJ, Jeremy, do you have any other kind of closing thoughts or statements or anything that we didn't cover that might be helpful for our audience to know? Or otherwise, I mean, this was really great information as well.
Oh, I was going to say also torches. So you don't have to have electricity to run a torch, and torches and torch cutting and torch heating flow across a lot of different trades industries. So that's something you can have access to without having high amp power in your garage. So that's another opportunity for folks to practice. And sometimes you can also, at certain orgs like the Chicago Avenue Fire Arts Center, they do lots of torch work. So that's another skill that's related to welding in all of these apprenticeships.
Awesome. All right. Well, I think just in closing, thank you, Pete, Jeremy Thompson, Jeremy Parker, CJ, for being here today and sharing all of your knowledge. I think for everybody who attended today, each of these individuals, I'm sure would be happy to chat further if you have any questions. So at the very beginning, we had a slide that had all of their contact information. So we will be sending a follow-up email to everybody that registered. So you will have their contact information if you'd like to chat further. And then this this slide here, all the QR codes go directly to their websites if you want to learn more. Really great resources, again, with Jeremy Parker's Apprenticeship Minnesota website, kind of talks about all of the different apprenticeship programs. But yeah, I really thank you, audience, for all of your amazing questions and for attending this afternoon. And again, speakers, thank you so much for being here and sharing your time with us. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. And if you have any questions, you can feel free to contact me as well. I can point you in the right direction for any other programs you might be interested in. I know as people are leaving too, we do have another speaker series event coming up on November 12th. We're going to have 3 apprentices who are going to talk about their experience and their programs. So join us again on November 12th at noon. We'll see you all later. Thank you.
Thank you.